Now just look at all this amazing hardware. Back at like a decade ago, this would be the best you could get pretty much. Radeon HD 6950, AMD's best offering, most high-end card of the time. An SSD, a 240 gig SSD even. Unheard of. A really nice ENERMAX 5.0 power supply. And this motherboard also really great. It is the ASUS M4A89GTD Pro. This really was one of the best boards you could get for the AM3 socket. A pretty interesting thing about this motherboard is this right here, the VGA switch card. I've never seen one of these things before, but it says on it on the other side that you have to install this on the PCI X16 one slot if there's nothing else installed. And in it we have the AMD Phenom II X4 970. Not the best CPU you could get. You could get also a 6-core, this is a quad-core, but still a really good, and this was pretty much the value king at the time. An equivalent would be like a Ryzen 5 3600X. Now for RAM we have 8 gigs of DDR3. If you bought a high-end system back in the day, this is what you would get. Now all of this together used to cost probably like $1,000 over a decade ago. And I picked this PC up for just $70 a couple of weeks ago. And let's see how this performs in 2021. Let's start with putting some fresh thermal paste on the CPU and on the GPU. Just look at this wonderful setup for my computer. Now let's install Windows on this. And to do that we obviously have to turn it on, but since we don't have it in a case, there is no power button. A handy trick you can use to turn on a computer without a case is to simply short the power pin and the ground pin on the front header connectors with a screwdriver or something. So I'm doing that. System just turns on like that. And let's start with Cinebench R23. So the test finally finished and we got a score of 1811 points, which when you look at the graph isn't a lot. So now let's actually play some games on this system, starting off with Grand Theft Auto 5 and just driving around. It's actually quite playable, it's actually really playable. You get above 30 FPS, 30 to 40 FPS generally. And I'm using a mix of high and normal graphical settings at 1080p, as you can see. I do have the population density, population variety and the distance scaling quite low because the CPU is the bottleneck in this case. As it regularly shuts up to 100% usage on the CPU, and when I lower the resolution, which I'll do really quickly to demonstrate, you can see that the CPU is at 100%, so now going to 900p. The GPU has less work to do, and now the CPU pretty much shuts up to 100% all of the time, and the GPU is just kind of chilling. I would have loved to play Cyberpunk now, but unfortunately Cyberpunk wouldn't even load on this system, and I'm pretty sure it's due to the CPU that just isn't powerful at all. Now the Outer Worlds did load, but it doesn't really play as well. It is playable, I guess, with around 20 to 25 FPS I'm getting, and I'm playing at 900p with all low settings. But honestly, if you want to play this, don't play it to something like this. You do want something better. It's playable, I guess, but it's not ideal. If you could get by, Let's just put it that way. And now for The Witcher 3, I'm playing at 900p with the low preset enabled. As you can see, 900p, the low preset. And it actually plays pretty well. It doesn't look the best, but it looks perfectly fine, pretty good. And getting about 30 FPS, 30 to 35 FPS, and it's perfectly playable. In the city of Novigrad you might be getting a little bit less, but if you want to play this game on the system, you can totally do so. Now, is the system still viable in 2021? Well, for lighter esports games it definitely is. You won't have any problems with it, even though I didn't test any of them. Anything can play it. I'm sure this will play CSGO, League of Legends, games like that with ease, without any problems. When it comes to AAA games, older AAA games from like 2015, 2016, you will get a playable experience. You will get a pretty decent experience actually. But for the latest, the newest AAA games like Cyberpunk and the Outer Worlds, also a really new game, you probably want something better. You want to look at some higher-end hardware. But for the €75 I paid for this system, I think it's a pretty good deal.